Alright, this video I want to make the statement that the best style is no style. So the basis of this video, was something somebody forwarded to me saying like kickboxing versus Muay Thai. And when I think about it, it's silly when people make comparisons like that, um, like it's unscientific. When they say like, oh, here's a kickboxer champion fighting against a Muay Thai fighter champion. Let's see who wins. Well, it doesn't matter who wins. It doesn't make the winner of whatever style mean that it's a better style. I say it's unscientific because it's not the same person. Now, if you had an identical replica of yourself, exactly just like you, and they do exactly what you do, and then you have one of your replicas do kickboxing, and another one of your replicas do Muay Thai boxing, and then you make the comparison, then it makes sense. But when you have one human being that practices kickboxing and then another human being that's a different person practices Muay Thai, then you have them fight, it doesn't prove any style is better because they're different people. Like the question is it the style or is it the person? Like who is better? Is it the person that's better or is it the style that's better? So for example, if you have some mediocre, untalented person that claims like one of the ultimate ways, like say Jeet Kune Do, and he gets demolished by somebody who practices boxing, it doesn't mean that boxing is a better science than Jeet Kune Do. It just means that the person who was practicing boxing was better developed athletically and his body was more trained and he has more skill in his body, but it doesn't mean that the science is better. So when you look at things from a scientific standpoint and you compare styles, you want to analyze whatever fighting sport has, what their rules are and what they're limited by. So if there's a sport that's very limited, like say boxing, and you compare that sport to kickboxing, and say the only difference is that kickboxing allows kicks, boxing doesn't allow kicks, then the science of kickboxing is more comprehensive than the science of boxing because it incorporates more techniques than that's allowed in boxing. Now if you look at boxing, kickboxing, and then Muay Thai, so say boxing you can't kick, kickboxing says you could kick and you could punch, but you can't elbow and you can't knee. And then Muay Thai comes in and says, well, you could kick, you could punch, and you can knee, and you can elbow strike. Then the science of Muay Thai boxing is more comprehensive because it allows for more. Now, when you have something like cage fighting that's coming in to try to say, oh, we're above all these other styles or all these other combat sports because we're going to allow punching, kicking, elbows, knees, and ground fighting. The problem with that is that they're not allowing the counters to the ground fighting. They're not allowing the proper counters. So then that pretty much puts the ground fighting, it kind of makes it very unrealistic. It falsifies the ground fighting. So, it's almost like saying, okay, you could elbow and you can, like, say a Muay Thai person said, Muay Thai boxing is like saying, okay, you can elbow and knee, but then you're not, while I'm trying to elbow and knee you, you're not allowed to punch me while I'm trying to do that. You're not allowed to kick me while I'm trying to do an elbow and a knee to you. It doesn't make sense, because if the person could stop your elbow and knee with a punch or a kick, then he should be allowed to do it. You shouldn't prevent him from doing so. That's kind of what they're doing with the ground fighting. You know, okay, there's ground fighting, but then you're not allowed to do this to counter it because it's too lethal. You know what I mean? Like, that's when things get really, you know, deceptive. You know, so cage fighting is claiming itself to be the ultimate combat sport, to represent the most versatile techniques allowed in combat sport, but it's deceptive the way that they're doing it with the ground fighting. You know, because there's a lot of rules against what you could do to counter the ground fighter that makes what they're doing very deceptive. But Muay Thai, because it just stays stand up, there's no ground fighting involved, then it's more comprehensive than boxing, is more comprehensive than kickboxing. And if you compare all those other combat sports, martial arts that have turned into sports competitions, like karate point sparring and taekwondo point sparring, whatever the rules are, you know, a lot of them are very limited, more limited than Muay Thai boxing or kickboxing, you know, and that's what makes it, you know, less of a science, more of a game. The science is just no limitations, so there's no style, it's just pure combat. And that's what Bruce Lee was practicing, that's what he was promoting. But the label in itself makes it seem as if it's a style, but it's not a style. It's just practicing the purity of combat and self-defense and strategic combat and just the pure science, the pure martial arts without discrimination. Saying, oh, you know, you're a ninja or you're a samurai, okay, you're not allowed into this tournament because you guys practice with blades. Or, oh, you're a Kali stick fighter, oh, you're not allowed because you use sticks. Oh, you're in the Shaolin Kung Fu, oh, you can't use those bow staffs, you're not allowed into this tournament. Any type of tournament is not the pure science. Now, there are some tournaments that are less restrictive than others, but nonetheless, as long as it is a tournament, it creates the restrictions and it becomes unscientific. And that's the problem with all styles that don't stay true to the pure science of combat. And pretty much almost all styles have turned into something that's no longer pure. From Taekwondo, Olympic Taekwondo, Olympic Judo, you know, they got those BJJ tournaments, you know, karate tournaments, boxing as a sport, kickboxing as a sport, Chinese kickboxing, Sansao as a sport, Muay Thai as a sport, MMA, cage fighting as a sport. Everything has turned into a sport or some type of game, and then they've been led astray from the purity of combat, which has no restrictions, no rules, just pure, instinctual, scientific combat. And that is what Bruce Lee was practicing, that's what he was studying, that's what he was representing. And that is not a style, that's just staying true to the arts to the martial arts and staying true to the streets, to the reality of, any and all possible outcomes that could occur on the streets. So that's not a style. So no style is the ultimate. No style, no sport. It's just you practice the science, and that's the ultimate. I'm not going to say that cage fighting is above Muay Thai when it comes to being like having the least amount of rules in combat sport. But I could say the progression of boxing to kickboxing to Muay Thai would probably have the least amount of rules compared to those three. Cage fighting is just kind of a deception to me. To me, it's just, as I stated, disallowing the proper counters to the ground fighter is not, it really damages, the whole idea of less rules, because they're allowing the ground fighting, but then they're not allowing the counters, which doesn't make sense, And if you take away the ground fighting from cage fighting, it pretty much becomes Muay Thai. Or Sansao. Or Sansao doesn't allow elbows and knees, but it pretty much becomes Muay Thai, and it's absolutely nothing new, nothing special. There also is just pure wrestling with wrestling rules, and that's kind of like in the same category as boxing, but just opposite. So there's just a lot of rules: no kicking, no punching, no elbows, no knees. Things like that. Whatever rules there are creates the limitations. And you have to decide, what you want to represent. But almost everything out there has become a sport, has become a game. And as it becomes a source of entertaining people, it becomes less scientific. So Hollywood movies, for example, is just pure entertainment, and it becomes extremely extremely unrealistic. The only real person was probably Bruce Lee that integrated the science of combat into film, but nobody else ever has really done that for Hollywood. It's all just fantasy. So you got Hollywood, which is the worst as far as representing the science of combat, and then you have something like boxing, and then kickboxing, and then Muay Thai, and then cage fighting is just, it doesn't really fit in too well because of the deceptions involved in my eyes. And then you got something like what Bruce Lee was practicing, which is the pure science of survival, or tactical fighting, or strategic fighting. And there's no label to it, really, because it's not just Bruce Lee doing it. It's people that stay true to the reality of what can happen. And there are a lot of people out there that shoot guns, that train with guns, that own guns, that have permits, that don't have permits, or whatever, but they are sticking to the reality, and that is the category I'm talking about. Like a police officer is not Jeet Kune Do, but he's in the reality of this is real life, this is real survival. And then there's other people out there that practice real combat with really no rules, but it's not Jeet Kune Do. It's not the way of the intercepting fist. It's just what they practice to survive on the streets. And that is always above any combat sport or any martial arts style that has become impurified due to the art transforming into a game, of play fighting, essentially, and that's not the true science. You know, the true science is about training towards survival, not to win admiration through play fighting. So that's the way that I see it.